Yes, so just as an introduction, hello guys. Welcome back to another episode of HP for Gamers. This is where we help everyone, gamers, healthcare professionals, business, administrative staff, Pokemon trainers, unicycle jugglers, everyone understand a little more about how they can better approach the world of esports from the health perspective, the performance perspective, and then today from the parent perspective, maybe understanding a little more from our guest, Mamabenjy. We have Miss Ann Fish, and I'm just so happy that you were able and willing to come to speak with me today because I don't know if my viewers know, but I'm actually going to be having a daughter in 7 days now, which is
Wow.
really
Wow.
crazy to say, and maybe this setup's just so that I can learn a little more ahead of time about how to approach the gamer daughter, or gamer child. But would really love to just hear a little more about your background and just for the people that might not know who you are, and yeah, if you don't mind giving us just a brief of who
Yes,
you
I
are.
mean, yeah, of course. So obviously I'm Benji Fish's mum. And now currently I'm managing him. And along with some of the support team that we've got around him, like Loaded and Energy, etc. But sort of making sure everything runs smoothly. But my background is just more sort of I've always come from like a business background and self-employed. So I do understand how that sort of side works. So, in the early days when I left school, I was doing more sort of like accountancy and management accountancy, and with some recruitment as well. And then went into starting up my own business, which was in computer training. It then went on to management training. So that was very much in the early days of computing. So, you had Windows 3.1, you had WordPerfect, Lotus, that whole, you weren't really able to make phone calls, it was still on the dial up modems and things like that. So those really early days,
Hmm.
which I ran. My husband came on board, David, and we took that to the corporate market, which we ran for about 10 years before selling it. And then, sadly, after he passed away, I went back because at the time Benji was only 8 months old and Charles was 7. So therefore, it was a case of finding something I could do part time that worked with the children. So I
Hmm.
found a company which I've actually been with for 15 years. So doing everything from accounts to running their help desk. They were an AV integrator. But in addition to that, I used to work for some of the Tutor Doctor franchises, which I don't. Tutor Doctor is actually in America, I think, as well. So it's a Canadian company,
Hmm.
but they've got franchises where they actually supply tutors that actually come to the house to help train. So I help do some of the recruitment and admin for that,
Oh, cool.
as well as sort of like doing the background. And that was actually very helpful for when I just made the decision to make Benji home tutor, to be homeschooled, for example, because I
Hmm.
was already having tutors to the house to help out. So that was very good. And then about a year ago, I handed in my notice, and I've just been literally full time working with Benji, purely because we were doing at the time a lot of traveling.
Hmm.
Like we were going to America, Tokyo, Australia, and I couldn't juggle the two. It was just too complicated. So
Got it.
yeah.
And at that
Mm,
time, and if you don't mind me asking, when you did hand your, resignation
mm.
letter, was it already the period of time where you saw stability with things that Benji was doing, or was this more, I'm just going to commit and I really trust that he's going to,
No,
I'm
no,
going
no,
to
no.
help to build it
We
up?
were. He was already. I mean, this was January last year,
Oh,
so
got it, got it.
he was already, signed with Energy. He was already, you know, got various sponsors and things like that. So there was already that stability there. Yeah.
Got it, got it. What was it like in the beginning to, I guess, experience that esports lifestyle with Benji over the past couple of years?
Well, initially, I didn't really know that much about esports. Obviously, I was aware of it. At the time before he signed for Energy, he was with a smaller org. So it was a case called Cryptic. It was just a very small org. Actually, Nyrox was with them as well. Surprise, and sort of some of his. And at the end of the day, he didn't stay there for that long. But at that time, I did a lot more research on the internet about organizations and what the whole esports world was about. But it wasn't until we signed with Energy, and then I went over to Oslo and met up with Johnny, who's Mr. Savage's dad. And it was quite an eye-opener. So although I've always throughout my entire life been within the business world, so I understand about running a business, we've had staff, sort of in the corporate sector, because he was sort of like a few months ahead of me, almost like that, because Martin signed beforehand. There was this whole world that I wasn't really aware of. And I remember coming away thinking, oh my God, this is just so much bigger than what I even imagined. But I've been fortunate that obviously Johnny's been there to help me. We've helped each other, throughout the boys' period, both, boys' career, whether that's sort of like Martin's and Benjy's, even when they weren't sort of duoing together and things. And then obviously along the way, we've met other parents and, sort of now formed like a little group so that we can, ask advice, and there's a team that we can go to if we need any help.
Definitely.
Which is great. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so that is COPE, right? The Coalition of Parents.
COPE. Yeah. COPE. Yeah, which is so that's brilliant. That's only been running a few months, actually, I think, sort of, last year. So that's brilliant. Yeah.
Right. I think that's so important for all the parents, because it's such a, I guess, in-depth industry that you really have to understand a lot about to really help your kid make educated decisions about what's next. And so I guess, like, when you were learning from Johnny, what was something that was pretty important for you as a parent to recognize that maybe made you feel a little more comfortable about doing this esports?
It was more about sort of like things like, branding and trademarks and how the accounts, the tax side works, etc. So that in itself is quite complicated with Epic and the way you have to claim it back from the UK, etc. But it's actually different in Norway. But yeah, just that whole admin background sort of side and etc. It was good to collaborate, and then understanding the Twitch side, the YouTube, the social media side, etc. So yeah, it was good to have someone to bounce ideas off. And obviously Energy was there as well in the background as well to offer support and advice as well.
Definitely. And so I guess what do you see right now, at least for the parents in the space, is maybe missing, from your experience, with working in COPE, and I guess what the current goal is now for your role in COPE?
Well, I obviously most of COPE is actually based in America. All the guys are in America, so there aren't that many over in Europe at the moment. But it's just becoming a focal point, so that if parents have got questions, about how do you sign for orgs, looking at the contracts, etc., that there's somewhere for them to be able to go to get advice. But equally for the players, so for example, they have they can help them, when their accounts get banned and things like that, or whatever, or they can give them some advice and things. So they are actually talking to, you know, Epic Games and Twitch, etc., and some of those organizations. So they can help to a certain extent. It depends on what the issues are, etc. But yeah, they're doing. I mean, they're growing. They're also working with the colleges in America.
Right.
So
with
that
ASAP,
it's
I
a
think.
different system to in the UK and Europe. But in America, you've got the scholarships, haven't you? Sort of for going to colleges. So they've partnered and are working quite a lot within that sort of field as well.
Got it. Yeah, one big thing, and it sounds like, you know, a lot of what you learned and what was important to navigate in the beginning was all those administrative things that, you know, you had to be familiar with to make sure that Benjy had a good foundation, at least on that side. But what about the health and wellness side? You know, as he maybe played a lot more, stayed up a little later, you know, what was your thought or approach as a parent?
Benjy, I suppose gamers, they always tend to stay up late anyhow. It's sort of quite a nocturnal thing. So even before he was signed with Energy, Benjy had always completely reversed day and night. So every school holidays, within literally 24 hours, he will have literally reversed day and night. So he'd be sleeping you know, during the day and up all night. So it was something we got used to. And I was happy to go along with that. I didn't really police it too much, you know, because I understood what he was trying to achieve and that sort of like gaming side and things. And obviously they need to practice. The issue more was sort of when we were trying to balance school with it as well. So obviously, you know, I might go to bed at 10 o'clock and he'd be telling me, oh, I'll come off in an hour or something. I'd go to sleep and then find he was still up at 2 a.m. or something, or 3 a.m.
Right.
So that was more of a challenge. And then I must admit, in the early days, maybe I was known to switch the internet off or pull the plug and get really angry with him.
Of course,
but there
of course.
again, it's 2 a.m. in the morning and he's got to be up at 6 for school the next day. So, you know, so I think you've got to really try and get that balance right and set the boundaries. You know, I appreciate that some tournaments go on to the early hours of the morning, especially if they're doing NAE tournaments, but you sort of have to plan it. But from a health perspective, Benjy, one of the reasons he got involved in more into esports was because he was always into traditional sports. So he played 10-pin bowling since he was like 2 years old. He did his first competition when he was 3.
When he was 3, wow.
Yeah, sort of quite early on, and he was pretty good at it. So, and the idea was that he would perhaps play for England. You know, we used to go up and have coaching from some of the England coaches. So he also was really into his cricket. But then we had a few things happen. So in his teen years, he developed Osgood Schlatters and also Severs. So Severs is similar to Osgood's, but it's in the ankles. And so literally if you saw him coming off a rugby pitch or something like that, or playing football, you'd think he was like 70. He was in so much pain. And so therefore after a while, the doctor suggested that he took time out. And so that was how come he got more, because he wasn't playing the traditional sports. He got more involved in taking that sort of like competitive side that he had for his normal sports into sort of more esports. And he also had a situation where one summer when he was playing cricket, all his hands and feet peeled. Exfoliate keratosis or something it's called. We originally thought it was something that they put on the grass, some sort of, but they never found out what the reason was. So that also presented itself a problem, because he ended up having to wear gloves for like a whole term, etc., while sort of like his hands healed and things. So it was a sort of natural progression to sort of like move away from traditional more into the esports world.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say what you say about him staying up and you having to give him that boundary, because I actually, did the same thing. I remember that my friends and I would stay up pretty late, and we would tell our parents we would be going to sleep, and then we would turn our computers back on and play. And one of my friends did this thing where he was living on the second floor, so he put a plastic bag on the top of the staircase so that he would hear his mom pick it up so that he could quickly turn off the monitor and go pretend like he was sleeping.
I mean, Benjy said that even if he came off, he would maybe still be looking on his phone, until the early hours or something or whatever, sort of.
Got it.
It's difficult, if I'm asleep and think we've only got, it's only a 1-bedroom house, it's quite small, so he doesn't have the space to have a computer in a separate room and then go. I mean, even though it was a 1-bedroom house, we still had 4 of us living here. So it wasn't, you couldn't really do that, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Got it. And so you said school that, he would get up, but I also know that you mentioned you transitioned him to more of like homeschooling with the tutoring. Yeah. So how did that work in that? Would you set the school time and say, hey, it has to start at 6 a.m.? Or was that previously when he was more brick and mortar?
No. So, I mean, I didn't go down the home tutoring route or the homeschooling route until he'd actually signed for Energy and was qualified for World Cup.
Got it.
So I then went to the school because I appreciated the fact that he needed to compete with the other players on a level playing field. And a lot of those players were full-time esports players, practicing 10, 12 hours a day. So if Benjy was trying to do his schoolwork as well as getting to the level and maintaining that sort of like level that he needed to, he wasn't going to be able to achieve that. It just wouldn't be that level playing field. So I went to the school to see whether there was any way they could do sort of like part-time hours, or he could cut down some of the subjects or take time out. So the school already did boot camps for like golfers,
interesting.
for swimmers and things like that and whatever. But the problem was that those disciplines, like if you were a golfer, say for example, you would every term they did 2 weeks boot camp for them. They would let them go to this boot camp, but that was just daytime, and then after that 2 weeks they could go back to normal school routine. Whereas with Benjy, it was constant. It was always going to be, he's always going to be up in the evenings. It wasn't like just 2 weeks and then not. So after an extensive chat with them, the decision was I decided to take him out and homeschooling. Now, I was already having, because of the fact that I work for Tutor Doctor, one of the franchises, I was already having tutors coming into the house to help him with like maths, English, French, science, etc., just to keep him up to the level he needed to be at, because I was aware that he was missing out on, because he was tired in school, he was missing wasn't 100% listening to the lessons, etc. So I was supplementing that in the background. So it was a natural progression to then say use those same tutors just to come in and work around his own time schedule. So if he was getting up at say 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, I would have the tutors in say from 2 till 3 or 2 till 4 or something, and then he could then go and do his, you know, whatever competitions or scrims or whatever it is was on later on.
Right. That's such an interesting part of I guess professional esports that, you know, I didn't really think about too much in the maintaining the education throughout their career because they're young. So that's really interesting to hear.
I mean, from my perspective, people take year out, you know, sort of like when they get in the UK, you do like GCSEs and then A levels. So A levels are like 16 to 18. And then people take maybe a year out before they go to university. So you can always do education. You know, I went back and did college, I don't know, 5 years ago or something or whatever. I was trying to get my some computer technology, sort of Cisco. I was doing Cisco training. So I went back to college to do that. But, you know, there's nothing to stop. There isn't anything that says you have to do GCSEs from 14 to 16 and A levels from 16 to 18.
Exactly.
You can easily take the year out earlier or a couple of years out earlier and then go back and do your education. And the issue you have with, certainly with games like Fortnite, is that the older you get, your reaction time gets slower. So the majority of if you actually, there was an analysis done on the people that came top in the like FNCS and things like that. And they are primarily sort of like 15, 16-year-olds. And then as soon as you get to sort of 18, 19, 20, you know, it tails off. Now, it might be that they then go into other games or they do content creation or something like that. But the prime age, as it stands at the moment for Fortnite, is very much sort of 14 to 16-year-olds, or 17. So therefore, by doing the education first and then going to do the, you know, by parents saying, okay, well, you can't do it until you're 18, you're already, you know, not past, but you might, your reaction times are slower, so therefore you might not have such a competitive edge for going into it. So I think parents need to maybe try and work with their children to be able to juggle it earlier, you know, or at least allow them to take part in the competitions or have a certain amount of time for, you know, scrimming and things like that.
Right. I do think, though, that the jury is still out on, obviously, the importance of reaction time with, you know, your overall level of performance. And that I do think at the professional level in Fortnite currently, it's pretty underdeveloped in terms of coaching infrastructure and how a lot of the professional players approach the game. Just from my experience working with a few of the professionals in NA East, at least, and they're not as intentional as they could be about practice and taking notes and having a clear coach that watches. But I do think at this state of the industry and at this state in Fortnite, maybe it is that just the youth will dominate because one, they have a little more time to play, and then two, maybe it is.
So they do
physiology too. Yeah.
As soon as you get older, you've got then those commitments, haven't you? You're trying to, you know, work and, you know, or whatever it is you're doing, you know, and it then gets more complicated.
Right.
The other thing about what you're saying, the structure is, I think Fortnite is very different from the other games, like, you know, League of Legends and, you know, where you have a team of like 4 people, 5 people or whatever, and you have the coach and, you know, they all are together at a house maybe, or, you know, it's a different type of game, or it hasn't quite developed in the same way. It may be, and the other issue is that you have players from other teams, so they're not all on the same team. So therefore, Benjy's with, Energy, Martin's with 100 Thieves,
Right.
some, mate so an amplifier with a different org. So it's not like you've got the Energy Fortnite team.
Exactly.
Like you would have, some of the other games that they play, COD or Valorant or those sort of things.
It is something that, we have a clinical psychologist on our staff, and, we kind of have talked a lot and have worked with the team to try to provide that structure for them so that they can be a little more intentional about how they're approaching the game. But I think there is some responsibility also on the publisher themselves, right, to create what would be a consistent league structure, and or, hey, like, you can have this roster lock. And I think the fact that there isn't really this lock or commitment to your duo, trio, squads can also lead to issues. And I've spoken about this before, but even with like mental health, in that you don't feel safe, even though you've been playing in such a long time with 2 or 3 people, but that they can just drop you, right? And there's that culture of snaking, and it's happened to a lot of the pros that I've worked with, and it's just, I feel so bad because they put in time and they commit to that trio, and then at the last minute they get snaked, and then
there is
they're just
so
left.
much drama. There is so much drama within Fortnite, and who's with who and whatever it is. I mean, in terms of one of the things, it's very difficult to plan on Fortnite. So tournaments just spring up randomly. There's just no way you can plan for things. There was a situation back in Season X where all of a sudden Benjy would come into me and say, oh, by the way, we're going to Frankfurt for a month. We're going in like 3 days time. Can you please organize it?
Wow.
Equally, we were due to go to Tokyo, and all the flights were booked. Everything was planned. Benjy was doing a tournament out there, and all of a sudden, Winter Royale was announced, and it clashed with it. So I then spent ages trying to work out how I could change the flights to actually literally fly out to Tokyo, which isn't a 5-minute journey. Fly out to Tokyo, do the competition, and literally turn around and come back within like 24, 48 hours.
Oh my gosh.
In the end, the tournament was postponed, and then because of COVID, it hasn't happened. So I think the idea is perhaps to run it sort of in 2022. Unfortunately, it's sort of slowed on. But then because we had the flights booked, I couldn't get a refund. So I ended up going to Tokyo, and Benjy stayed here. And then I had to get people coming in to make sure he was okay and things. Because otherwise we would have just lost the flight. But
so did you enjoy Tokyo then?
Yeah, no, it was great. I went with Charles. It was going to be a family holiday to a certain extent as well, because my oldest son, Charles, and Amina, his girlfriend, came with us. Great. So they still came out. But it would have been nice to have had Benjy with us as well. And also because we would have been, we were going to, it was Crazy Raccoons that are out there. So we would have been with them. So it'd been quite nice to have seen it from people who actually, locals, etc. But no, I had a great time. And we're looking forward to going back. So, but yeah, that whole planning, it's a bit like, DreamHack Duos, which is tomorrow, only got announced like 48 hours ago.
Right.
So it's okay, nothing was planned, and it's okay to do it, but it's just that whole, it would be in some of the other tournaments, what's happening each season when the tournaments are, you can plan. There is no way you can plan for Fortnite events.
Exactly. And I remember that being a problem, at least early stage in esport, in CSGO, Counter-Strike. And where it was just non-stop tournaments, leagues were popping up. And I remember speaking with coaches at the time, and this is something I still truly believe at this point in esports, is that maybe from the management perspective or maybe from the coach perspective, they could say, well, I want my player to only play in these tournaments, and no matter what, because we expect a certain return on those tournaments, we were not going to participate in other ones, right? So that means like saying no to cash cups, and that's hard because there's the culture of the player-driven culture of saying, well, I want to play everything. I want to play cash cups, solo cash cups, dual cash cups, DreamHack duels.
Yeah.
And that was actually something that I tried to work. I had a talk with Benjy about that as well, saying that, hey, maybe that could be a consideration because, saying yes to a lot of things, often mentally you're committed to that. And sometimes that can lead you to burnout, right? And so that is something, how have you been maybe like sensitive to Benjy's schedule and maybe how he's been feeling every now and then? Have you noticed any issues of him dealing with burnout?
Yes, I mean Benjy's actually really good. So obviously he does, like, he's reached out to you, he's reached out to other professionals as well as, teenagers. They don't always reach out to their mum, etc. But they always the best, But the Fortnite, for example, does have downtime in between the seasons. So like you've got like maybe every 3 months you've got a new season, haven't you, coming out? So for example, over the Christmas period, he and quite a lot of the other players, they play other games. So that's if you talk to some of the other casters and coaches or something, they suggest that's really good for just switching off from Fortnite, etc. So for example, Benjy got into chess, as you may be aware. So he ended up sort of playing in PogChamps 3, but he's also playing like Rocket League. He plays Realm of the Mad God. He's playing, so he's having fun playing other games as well. And I think that's really important to sort of, so although he's just maining a certain sort of like maintenance type level almost, sort of maybe a couple of hours a day, or just keeping your mechanical skills up and things like that. But when there's no tournaments, to perhaps play other games. So he very much from a burnout perspective, he's doing that. And also he's doing quite a lot of exercise as well at the moment. So obviously he decided that he wanted to lose weight and keep fit. So he's got a personal trainer which he works with 3 times a week, and then the other days he's then training at home.
Awesome.
And he lost quite a lot of weight, so now he's working with his trainer to do more bulking up, etc. So
great. I can't wait to see him just be really buff, buff Benjy.
yeah. No, that'll be interesting. So, but no, he's working really hard on it. And I think, although, I was involved with Herbal, I don't know, are you familiar with Herbalife?
Yeah.
So I was a distributor for years, and so with that whole weight loss and sort of trying to lose weight, it doesn't matter whatever you do, whether it's doing that, whether it's trying to give up smoking, whether, drinking, or whatever it is that you're trying to work with, it has to be up to the individual. So it's got to be a must for them. So, as much as it's like saying you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Exactly.
You can. I could tell Benjy, yes, you need to, do the exercise, you need to do this, whatever. But until it actually became a must for him, he really wanted to do it. That's when he took it seriously and, worked on it. He got his app. He was sticking religiously to X number of calories a day initially, making sure he had all the various like carbos, proteins, etc., whatever, doing his workout every day. So yes, until he actually took it, that, as to say, that must for him, it was very much hit and miss as to, he would play with it almost, he'd do it for a week and then, we won't bother with it now, sort of thing. Well, so
Yeah,
but that, as I said, that's like with anything, really.
Yeah, I love that perspective, right? Most of the time, we always know what we maybe what is good for us or what is maybe ideal for us, but in the context of our own lifestyle, it might not be immediately or necessarily important. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times, professionals, and I think specifically in esports, we try to force that framework on them when we should just kind of bridge the gap and say, hey, well, where are you at right now and what's important to you? Then maybe we can help you achieve your goal, and if it makes sense, we can do this.
And that's why I was going to say that's why sort of when you look at the other esport like League of Legends, Rocket League, or where they've actually got the houses, they quite often have gyms there. They'll have maybe personal trainers come in, they'll have chefs come in, etc., to make sure they keep the right nutrition and things. I mean, we visited the Phase House, for example, when we were in LA. And you know they've got their whole setup with the complete gym and things like that and whatever. So I think that's good, but because lockdown hasn't helped, but because of the way Fortnite players, they're primarily working from their home, you know, playing from their home, so therefore it doesn't work out that way.
Right. And I definitely think it's a cultural thing, right? If a lot of people in the community are doing it, it just becomes part of the culture of what they adopt, right? And so I love that more and more organizations are looking to pick this up and include these kind of professionals, because, hey, if it just becomes a standard part of what it takes to be a gamer, then that's going to help us play more, right, and hurt less.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. No, it's for the good. And so many, as I say, a lot of these the players are quite young, so they need some guidance, really. They need some, you know, help, etc. So yeah.
What has been then the most difficult thing, you know, in your perspective of being a parent in esports?
That would have to really just go back to what I said before, being able to plan for anything. It's that complete uncertainty that you know you just can't put anything in place, or if you do put something in place, then very quickly it will change, or all of a sudden, you know, he's got to do something, you know, tomorrow or whatever, you know, etc. So being able to, the planning side and being able to react very quickly to the demands of the industry is quite challenging. So
definitely, right? Yeah, being adaptable to allow them to really be able to compete, right? And I can definitely see that as a barrier, right? If the parent's schedule doesn't allow for it and they can't compete, right? Then I can see that being pretty tough for
I mean, like, for example, that like at the moment there aren't that many tournaments going on, so therefore the players want to take advantage of all the competitions that they can. So like, for example, tomorrow you've got the DreamHack, but like EU is 7 till 10, and then NA East is 11 till 2 a.m. if you're in the, and most players would probably want to play both tournaments,
right?
Or at least try to, but there won't be that many parents that maybe would let their children stay up till 2:30, 3 a.m. in the morning to be able to be the tournament, because they don't understand that how important, you know, that it's quite important for them to participate, and there won't be another one for another month or 2 months or whatever. So so I think it's also about getting the players to talk to their parents to try and understand it a little bit more. And one of the things I'm doing with Johnny, so Miss Savage's dad, in addition to obviously working with Cope, is actually we're co-writing a book, which should be out at the end of 2021, which is all about all aspects of being a pro player. So that is, you know, all the health aspects, the mental health sort of side, but also the career options. Certainly there's a lot of certainly like in the UK and also US, probably more, but both of them, there are now esports sort of college courses you can do, and also degree courses. And that's sort of like also homed in around sort of like the management side of it and production side of esports. But there are also lots of other careers that you can have, like the content creation, or within esports you can work with in the back office, whether that's be social media or management or whatever. So it explains all about that, the revenue streams, how that all works, as well as using Benjy and Martin's examples of how they've coped with life. So we're quite excited to for that book, because it should hopefully help parents and also players just to understand a little bit more about what esports is all about, and the Fortnite, etc.
I mean, hopefully I'm going to definitely get one. I'll keep it in the library for 15 years for my future daughter. Just keep it tucked there. But that's exciting. What's the name of the book, if you don't mind? We
haven't decided on a name yet, so we haven't quite got that far yet. So
got it.
We're just calling it a guiding book at the moment, but we haven't decided on a title. So, but we're almost finished. It's almost finished first draft, and then it needs to go sort of like through copy edit and sort of proofreading and things. So hopefully by the end of May, June-ish time, it should be finished, or sort of, and then we need to look at the distribution sort of and publishing side. So, but hopefully for sort of around about October, November time, for the Christmas market, etc. So, or around about that sort of time. So,
so let's see. Let's rewind a little bit. Let's talk a little more about the World Cup, because I actually had played a lot during that time. I didn't qualify. But I did make a little bit of money. But it would have been nice to go to the World Cup to see the whole experience. What was your experience like as a parent going to that crazy event? And then seeing the meme come out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't... I'd never been to a LAN. Neither Benjy or myself had been to a LAN competition. So there wasn't anything to compare it to as such. It was... I mean, it was very exciting. Obviously, Benjy, the first time he'd ever been to America, so for that. But actually getting to meet all his friends in real life was amazing. We were at the Energy had organised a boot camp at the Helix Centre in New York. So that was great. We had our own. I mean, they were amazing. They're amazing boot camp. So they had quite a lot of other teams there, like Solary, Ghost. There was Energy. There was quite a few other. I think FaZe came there for a while and things. Although they had a separate one, but I think they did come there to practice. So it was a brilliant way to actually chat to other parents and actually meet the players, etc. Right. The World Cup itself, it flew past in really, really quickly. I was very stressed. Very, very stressed. That's all I can say. I was a nervous wreck, really. I don't know how the players managed to cope with the stress of playing. And, when we went there, I was there. There was a parent area that we sat in. But it was, just very, very emotional. That's all I can say. Yeah. And obviously they didn't quite do as well as they wanted to, so managing the expectations and things like that and whatever. But I mean, they handled it amazingly well. I mean, I find that when I played a couple of cash cups. Perfect. Or even arena, where I'm desperately trying to get to 25th place to get my 60 hype points, or in the cash cup trying not to die, etc. My nerves go through the roof. Literally, I can feel myself like so nervous. How they felt on a main stage, sort of playing, is just beyond. And that's that's one of the things actually Benjy said, that because if he was to play something now, he would hopefully play a lot better because he's got that experience. He's been to some other LAN competitions now, so he's actually got that live experience as opposed to sitting in your room and playing. It's quite a bit different. And also the noise there. So there was issues with I think initially some of them used wireless mice, so therefore they didn't connect properly because there was so much wireless activity within the stadium.
Oh, interesting.
So using like the wired mice, they were using special headphones, so they had to use the headphones that Epic Games had decided on for the event, which was different to their normal headset, but it gave noise cancellation, so it would try and drown out a little bit of the noise from the stadium, but apparently you could still hear some of it and things. So I mean, as I say, for me, I didn't have anything to compare it to, but it was, an incredible experience, but just very emotional, really. So,
is there anything you would do differently in terms of preparation? If now that you have this experience, all this emotional stress that you're managing, what's the lesson that maybe for future parents?
For myself, I don't think I could actually really do anything differently, to be honest. I get stressed anyhow, when I'm actively trying to calm myself down, so that like when he's playing the big tournaments, and so much is on the line, like the grand finals of FNCS or whatever. Initially, when I was doing it, I my heart rate was going through the roof, really. So I'm actively trying, calm down, take deep breaths, try and not let it stress me out too much. It is a competition, obviously, but okay, if he doesn't win, he doesn't win, etc. Funny enough, I was more stressed at the chess PogChamps tournament than I was the last FNCS. So I'm sort of trying to take it a little bit more calmer now and sort of chill. But I don't know whether, I don't think I personally could do anything differently.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like the level of emotional involvement of being a parent. Yeah, it's just the amount of stress. I mean, as a fan, right, as me working with a professional team right now, I already feel so invested in their wins and their losses. And it can really affect my state. So I can only imagine being at a LAN at the first big tournament of the year, how you must have felt.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's a bit like, I think studies have been done with like football fans and things like that. They're so invested in their team, when they're doing that, big European team, or their, European Cup, or whether they're doing sort of like in the UK, like FA Cup finals, or like NFL, your big, what's the big tournament out there?
Super Bowl.
NFL? Super Bowl, yeah. So everyone's so invested in it, isn't it? That, I'm sure I've heard that there's been studies of the fans and sort of how their heart sort of, rate changes, sort of during the matches and things and whatever. So it's no different. You want your child or your team to do well, don't you? So.
So as we get near the end of this, I definitely wanted to ask, about your career. Now you're gonna be going pro as well, right? So the entire Fish family will be just.
I don't think we'll be going pro, but no, my way too slow reaction time. But I'm enjoying playing, and that's what it's just fun for me, and it's a good way to actually connect with Benjy as well. Sort of, I've, as I say, I've got as some of the other parents have said, that you've got a whole new respect for what they actually do, because you're trying to do it yourself, you know, from the streaming side, from trying to grind arena. All I can say, I said to Benjy, it's like soul destroying for me anyhow. It's just hours and hours and hours and hours of trying to get these points in arena, especially because I'm not W king and sort of like fighting. I'm trying to get placement points. You know, if I lose 40 points or 60 points, you know, whatever it is, 120, it might take me 5 hours to try and get it back. So it's and I was getting a bit obsessed by it. I was playing for like 8 or 9 hours at a time to try and do it. And I think I made myself ill partly as a result of it. So I'm desperate. I'm cutting back on that. I'm not playing so much now. So yeah, and I think playing at the beginning of a season is actually also way more complicated, because everyone is literally trying to get to champions for you know, FNCS for cash cups. When I did it last season, in season 5, I did it towards the end of the season. So I think, you know, FNCS had already started. You know, whoever had needed to get into champs was already in there, so maybe it was slightly easier. So I'm going to give it a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, and then sort of like maybe try again and see if I can get it or something. So
got it. Well, definitely, you know, make sure you take care of yourself. That's the most important. And if you need help, you know, I'm always here for the Fish family. But yeah, I'm really glad that, you know, yeah, you're really taking the time to better understand his game of choice. And that's, I think it's so sweet that, you know, you're doing that. I can only hope to be, you know, the same in terms of a parent to really fully invest in what their interests are. And I think, I mean, that just sounds like what you need to do to be a good parent. And so I just want to say that it's so awesome and sweet to see, you know, a great parent like you in the space.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. And this, your daughter, is that going to be the first child?
Yeah, it's going to be my first. Yeah.
Big changes ahead then. Big changes.
I think
late
so.
night. Yeah.
Is there any tip that you would want to give me for my first?
Oh, I don't. Everyone gives parents tips. I mean, you ask someone for advice, and every single person will give you a different thing. I think you just have to go with what works for you. You know, believe in yourself. Believe, you know, that you're doing it right. That there are people out, as I say, otherwise you'll get 10 different, you know, people's opinions. So go with what works for you, your gut instinct, and that will be right.
Yep, I appreciate that approach. I think that I've definitely already experienced that, the differences in responses. So yeah, it's good to hear that, just you'll see. Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
go with what. So,
right. So I guess as a last question, I wanted to ask, you know, what's your random tip in life for anyone listening to this or watching this? And it doesn't have to be limited to, you know, Fortnite, gaming, health, just anything that you can think of.
I mean, I think a lot. It's probably about having the right mindset, to be honest. That's probably one of the most important things. There are so many tournaments that are won or lost on the sort of like the last matches and things like that. I remember with Mongrel, for example, Kyle, in the World Cup. In fact, Benjy did a tweet that I think after the first 3 games he had almost 0 points, but he actually came back in the end and did, you know, placed high. Equally, you know, sort of like there was a big thing last year, Benjy's DreamHack tournament. He qualifies sort of like in the last tournament, in the last match.
I think I remember that.
It's all about, I think that mindset of not giving up, and actually maybe getting some coaching to help with that, etc. I know some of the teams do have coaches on board, so and there are coaches out there that have been helping some of the players. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the mix would be, whether it's a 50-50 or, you know, 40-60 between skill level and mindset. But mindset would actually be quite high up there, I reckon.
Definitely. I think one of the things that I always say is that, you know, at the top, if we looked at the differences in mechanical skill, there's probably not going to be that much of a difference. And I think what maybe sets aside the great from the legendary is someone that has that mental resilience and or the right mental skills to continue to play well or continue to push even though they're not doing as well. So I definitely agree with that and love that. Actually, I was curious about one last thing, if you don't mind. What was your very first video game?
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So it's a text-based game by Infocom. And I must have spent about 6 months playing it. So I was introduced to it at work. But it's like a text-based adventure game.
Oh, cool.
So it was before, as I say, before Windows really and things like that were out. It was the early days. So that and Banjo-Kazooie, about the only two that I played.
I love that game, actually. I love Banjo-Kazooie. That game was really fun.
Yeah, that was great fun. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to answer all these questions and just maybe help any parents that are watching or just the community watching to learn a little more about your experience as a parent.
No, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And we will be ending the stream there. Thank you.